Before we start, I'd like to announce sadly that my V-Moda Boom Pro has bit the dust after just 6 months. I have no luck when it comes to microphones, I swear. But once I get money in, when the check arrives, I'm going to just send it in because it is technically still under warranty from V-Moda, and I will try to get it fixed, and hopefully I'll be able to go back to using that. But for now, I got to use this headset microphone here, which at least is fine enough. I just got to make sure not to keep it too close because of wind noise. But anyways, hey guys, Thunder here, and welcome to another new series. Now you may be thinking, you might need to calm down on those series. Well, if you may remembered, I made a post on the last episode of Rivals I did where I was kind of going through a bit of a burnout phase with it mentally, and I felt like maybe I should just kind of chill it back a bit, as well as kind of go for a different formatting, which will still happen because you guys said don't let them, if it's working you down, don't let it get to you, just do it the way you'd be happiest. And I really appreciate that you guys had put it in that way. I appreciate your kind responses for that. So that's still going to be the plan, but I might do a bit of an alternating thing here on Saturdays where I'll have some Top Gear power laps in Forza Motorsport 4, where I take a bunch of cars through the Top Gear track on Forza Motorsport 4 to see exactly how fast they would do. And in today's episode, we're going to be starting off with the starter cars that you're given at the beginning of the game to start if you start a career mode. Now, this isn't exactly a new idea. If you want to see my friend Emile do these power laps, he does it on Forza Motorsport 6, where he actually does it in the rain. So you'll see some certain vehicles in that game that you won't find here on Forza Motorsport 4, but I thought I'd do a dry variant because why not? I also can't show replays through this because unfortunately I don't own a 360 hard drive that works in my 360, so I have to use a portable one. It's a 320 gigabytes, so it works well, but it won't go into the 360. I have to get me something like I think it's like a Western Digital or something, or just get an official hard drive, who knows. But that is the thing to note, so that's why I have to do it through this method. Sadly, I would have much rather liked to be able to do it in terms of doing it with replays, because it just tends to look nicer. But you know, I made sure to get rid of all the HUD so it at least looks as clean as it can, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it this way. So anyways guys, the first car we have here is the Ford Ka, making about 68 horsepower, 75 pound-feet of torque, and weighing 2,072 pounds. How does it drive? It drives fairly well. It's nice and stable around corners. It's although there's a little bit of slip up, if you really try to push it. But other than that, it's balanced, it's controllable, it's decent on the speed for what it has. It's not a bad car, really. I thoroughly enjoy what this Ka here can do. So it's a decent car to go with if you're starting the game for any particular reason. And yeah, it's also quite a nice looking car. I always like the way this second generation Ka looks. But that's just my personal opinion. Anyways, the next car we have here is the Toyota Aygo at 68 horsepower, 69 pound-feet of torque, and weighing 1,896 pounds. This is, I believe, the second lightest car that we have here today. It also is, of course, you may have heard, a bit low on the power. On torque, it's tied with two other cars for having the least amount of torque at 69 pound-feet of torque. Nothing goes lower than that. But, you know, the Aygo should be okay if you consider the fact that it weighs nearly 200 pounds less than the Ka. It's not quite. I mean, it's about on the same level as the Ka, but this has a little bit more slip up. It requires just a little bit more patience, a little bit more control needed. Not drastically. Like when I mean a little, I really do mean a little. And for the most part, it's still a fairly decent car to drive, but apart from the name, I never particularly cared for the Aygo. Maybe it's just because it's a Toyota, and, you know, Toyota's never quite been huge on me, with the exception of some of the cars they've made, obviously, but the Aygo is not one of them. And I think it kind of showed here that, you know, it just seems to be kind of just like a car, but except less interesting and not as good looking, personally. I mean, if you feel different, that's fine, but of course, maybe you prefer the fact that the car actually weighs less than the car. But for me, I think that extra torque kind of helps it out slightly to kind of balance out the fact that it weighs like nearly 200 pounds more. But yeah, you know, I'd say the Ka and the Aygo are, you know, they're kind of on similar ground, so still a good car to drive, just nothing I particularly care about. Anyways, next up we have is the Citroen C1, which on paper is in a bit of a struggle. A struggle, that's a new word, I think. Excuse me. But, this is the least powerful car we have here at 67 horsepower, 69 pound-feet of torque. But it's also the lightest car, as it only weighs 1,764 pounds, over 100 pounds less than the Aygo, and over 300 pounds less than the Ka. So really, at this point, we're starting to get like a bit of a reduced weight, so it kind of helps it. So despite the fact that it's the least powerful car here, it is the lightest, and I think that tends to help with the power to weight ratio a little bit. And honestly, I think that really showed with the C1. The C1 really surprised me. It's actually a bit grippier around the corners, more so than the Aygo and the Ka. And that's where I think it really helps make up the time for the C1. And there's an Xbox Live thing. I'll probably have blurred out the name or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I won't. I probably will, though, for privacy reasons. But, the C1 is generally a fairly interesting car. I wasn't expecting it to drive as well as it did, but it did, and I am perfectly okay with that. So, and it's the most interesting thing, because this is only like a 1 liter too, but it's that reduced weight. It gives it like better acceleration, and it's just nicer around corners. That it kind of gives the C1 a bit of an advantage over the Ka and the Aygo. But how well did it do? Well, we're going to see after we finish going through all the cars here. We got 4 more to go, and the next one here is the Volkswagen Fox. The most boring looking of the cars, to be honest, but makes the most torque at 74 horsepower and 91 pound-feet of torque. It's quite a bit more powerful on the torque end than we've been seeing with the C1, Aygo, and the Ka. It makes about roughly... Let me see here. I'm trying to do the math in my head. About 22 more pound-feet of torque over the likes of the C1 and the Aygo, and it makes about 16 pound-feet of torque more over the Ka. That being said, though, this is the heaviest vehicle by a notable bit at 2,410 pounds. The only car we had seen up to this point prior to weighing over 2,000 pounds was the Ka, and that's only by 72 pounds. This is by 410 pounds. And I think, honestly, it's because of that weight that the Fox isn't that particularly wonderful. It's not bad, obviously, especially because, you know, not a car with not a lot of power. You kind of expect it does what you would think. But the Fox, to me, it felt heavier to drive. Getting it around those corners, it didn't feel like it had the amount of grip that you would see in the Ka or Aygo, and more notably so in the C1. But it wasn't bad. It still wasn't a bad car, but the Fox is just the least interesting. It doesn't look particularly very appealing. It just looks kind of boring. It's the heaviest, of course, and it's a silly name, the Volkswagen Fox. I mean, the next car also has a silly name, I guess, too. And to be fair, maybe the Ka and the Aygo and whatever, but it's all based on subjective opinion, I suppose. But honestly, there's better options than the Fox, so that's the thing to keep in mind. So next up we have is the Chevrolet Spark at 81 horsepower. This so far is the most powerful car we've seen. Not quite the most powerful. There's one more car that makes more power, but this is the second most at 81 horsepower. Again, lowest amount of torque at 69 pound-feet of torque, but weighs about 1,905 pounds, making it only about 9 pounds heavier than the Aygo. And the Spark has extra power to it, so really, it's a no-brainer which one would be better. And it would of course be the Spark. Now, I'm told by fans of this game that the Spark is a good choice to go for starter cars in general, because apparently when you start upgrading it, it starts to become one of the best choices. I personally wouldn't quite know for sure, because I've never really properly played through this game. But that being said, it drives fairly nicely. It's a very well-balanced car. It's a plentiful. It's basic, it's simple, and it's honestly the best looking in my opinion. Out of all the cars here, I think the Spark has the best looks, but that's just, again, a subjective personal opinion. But this car did everything that I honestly was thinking the Spark was going to do, and I'm perfectly happy with that, so I can definitely live with that. I'm just trying to keep this conversation going. It's not exactly the easiest thing in the world for me to do, because, you know, sometimes you just have things come out and you can say it and you can just keep it going and you might have it flow nice and well, but for me that's not exactly the easiest thing to do. I really need to learn on how I can at least try to keep it going. You can kind of see a little bit of flinching a bit slightly with the car on the last couple corners, but nothing too serious anyways. But yeah, Spark, I really enjoy how the Spark drives. Anyways, next up, the second to last car we have here is the Nissan Micra at 79 horsepower, 81 pound-feet of torque, so definitely a little bit more powerful compared to some of the other cars we've been seeing, but it weighs 2,138 pounds, so it is a little bit on the heavier side. But it doesn't really seem to affect the Micra that much, because that extra bit of power kind of definitely is notable with the Micra. It feels very controllable. It's a very smooth car, and it's got a little bit of quickness to it because of having that little extra power. I mean, yes, it's 2 horsepower down on the Spark that we just saw, but it's about 12 torque more than the Spark was. So really, it kind of helps, even despite weighing about roughly 233 pounds more. It's a rough estimate, from 1,905 to 2,138. But it doesn't seem to matter with this car. The Micra just tends to glide through the corners. It has a good amount of grip. It's decent on the power. It doesn't feel quick. It feels light enough. Definitely more so than the Fox, to say for the least. And generally, hey, you can get it in this pretty interesting orange color. I just chose all the stock default colors, the one that it shows, because, well, honestly, I couldn't really think of anything else to put. But yeah, the Micra did a good job here, I think, personally. But how well of a good job it did, well, we're going to have to find out once we get to the times, which we'll do after we finish up with this one, as well as showing the last car in the list here. Now, these are also sorted by PI, but I'm not focusing on the PI. I'm just focusing on the power and weight they make, because that's usually a little bit more notable. So finally, we have the most powerful car here, the Vauxhall Agila. I want to say it's the Agila, but it's apparently, according to Emile, since he's from there, he would know, it's pronounced Agila or something like that. It's weird. 84 horsepower, 84 pound-feet of torque. So it's perfect. It's got 1-to-1 horsepower and torque. Not the most powerful torque-wise, because there still is the Fox, but it is the most powerful on the horsepower department. 3 more over the Spark, but it also weighs a little bit heavier over the Micra at 2,183 pounds, so it swaps the last 2 numbers positions from 2,138 in the Micra to 2,183 for the Agila. And honestly, this is the weirdest looking car shape-wise. It's a bit funky, as I try to show off there, apparently. I guess if you're from outside UK areas, you probably may know this a little better as the Opel Agila. It's essentially really an Opel just badged with a Vauxhall, because Vauxhall is the UK division of Opel, but they mostly sell pretty much the same cars. So I think, with maybe the exception of a couple, like, I don't ever recall those Monaros or VXR8s ever really selling as an Opel. If they did, please feel free to correct me, but I don't believe that was the case. So sorry, my neck's kind of bugging me, but it's kind of wearing. It's having to wear this in the position that it is isn't exactly something I'm entirely fond of. But it's all I really got right now, so it's what I'm going to have to deal with until I can send that V-Moda in and have them see if they could fix it and get that back. Anyways, guys, regardless though, we come over now to the times with all the cars having finished, and despite having the least amount of power and torque, the fact that it may have been the lightest may have helped it in the long run, because the fastest car today was the Citroen C1, doing a 1 minute 46.578. However, it barely beats out the Nissan Micra in second place with a 146.6 dead. A little bit further down, a second off, the Chevrolet Spark goes into third with a 1 minute 47.673, followed by the Agila at 1 minute 47.757. Again, just almost another second down, the Ford Ka is in fifth with a 1 minute 48.674. The Toyota Aygo in second last with a 1 minute 48.964. And in last place, the Volkswagen Fox doing a 1 minute 49.420, or 420 because haha, blaze it. And that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. If you like this, I'll probably come up with some other cars to do for the next episode. But for now, that's going to do it. So tell me what you think about this series. If you like it, great. And as always, if you want to donate to my Patreon, follow me on Twitter, or join my forum boards, all that are in the description box down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.